My name is Roz, and I'm 29 years old. The morning of my son's christening, I stood before the mirror in the small room behind the sanctuary, smoothing the lace collar on his little white gown. For one quiet moment, I let myself believe that today would be simple, just family, faith, and a name we had chosen with such care. My husband, Weston, stood behind me, straightening his tie, and caught my eyes in the reflection, smiling the way he always did when he sensed I was nervous. He didn't know yet what was about to happen. Neither did I. We had named our son Theodore, after Weston's grandfather, a man who had raised him when no one else would. It felt right. It felt like ours. My mother, Ingrid, had other plans, though she'd never said so to my face. She'd mentioned once, in passing, that she preferred the name Julian, that it sounded more distinguished, more fitting for a boy meant to carry the family forward. I'd smiled politely and told her the decision was already made. I thought that was the end of it. The church was full by the time we walked in, rows of relatives and friends in soft colors, the baptismal font gleaming beneath the stained glass. Father Dominic stood ready at the altar, hands folded, waiting for us to bring Theodore forward. I remember the hum of quiet conversation, the smell of candle wax, sunlight scattering colored patches across the stone floor. It should have been perfect. Then my mother stood. She didn't wait to be invited. She walked to the small podium where guests sometimes read a blessing and took the microphone meant for the deacon's announcements. My stomach dropped the moment she opened her mouth, because I knew that look, the look she wore when she'd already decided something and meant to make sure everyone agreed, whether they wanted to or not. "We're using the name we picked." "Yours is ridiculous," she announced, loud enough that the whole church turned. My mother declared, at my son's baptism, in front of the priest, in front of Weston's family, in front of people I had known my whole life, that Theodore would be called Julian instead. She said it as though it were already settled, as though my husband and I were merely guests at an event she had planned. My face went hot. Weston's hand tightened around mine. But she wasn't finished. Before I could step forward, she gestured to my aunt, who held a wicker basket lined with soft blue cloth, and began passing out small wrapped gifts to those nearest the front, each one monogrammed with the letter J, as if the matter had never truly been open to discussion. I watched faces shift from confusion to that uneasy, polite smile people wear when they don't know what else to do. She'd already told the whole church, she said proudly, that the baby would be Julian from that day on, and several relatives nodded along, since they'd already heard the name from her days before Weston and I had even arrived. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something sharper. This wasn't only about a name. It was my mother, once again, deciding that my life was hers to arrange. I looked at Weston. He looked back, and in that glance something steadied in my chest. I walked to the front of the church, past the startled faces, past my mother, who still held the microphone with a satisfied little smile, and asked Father Dominic to pause the ceremony. The church fell silent. Even the organist's hands froze above the keys. My mother turned to me, her expression flickering from confidence to disbelief, as though it had never occurred to her that I might refuse to fall in line with what she'd already decided for me. Father Dominic looked between us, uncertain whether to proceed, his hands still resting near the holy water. I took a breath, feeling every eye in that church settle on me, feeling my son's small weight against my chest, his tiny fingers curled around my sleeve. I hadn't meant to make a scene. I'd only wanted a quiet, meaningful morning for my child. But some moments choose you instead of the other way around, and this was one of them. "This baptism," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "is going to happen exactly the way my husband and I intended." My mother opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't finished. "You don't get to rename my son in front of everyone and call it a gift," I said, loud enough for the whole church to hear. "His name is Theodore. It was Theodore before you walked in today, and it will be Theodore when we walk out." A ripple moved through the pews, whispers passing row to row, and I saw my aunt quietly set the basket of monogrammed gifts down on the nearest pew, as though she no longer wanted to be holding them. My mother's expression cycled through disbelief, embarrassment, and finally something colder, more defensive. "I only wanted to help," she said, her voice tight, trying to soften the moment now that the eyes in the room had shifted to her. Julian is a beautiful name. I thought you'd come around once you heard it out loud, in front of everyone. That admission struck hardest, right there, before the whole congregation, that she had planned this, ordered gifts, told relatives, orchestrated an announcement because she believed public pressure would make me yield. I looked down at Theodore, fussing softly against my shoulder, unaware his own name was being argued over his head. Weston stepped beside me, a steady hand on my back. "Ingrid, we love you," he said, calm but firm, "but this isn't your decision to make." It never was. His voice carried none of the anger simmering under mine, just quiet, immovable certainty, and somehow that landed harder than shouting would have. Father Dominic, who had waited patiently through it all, finally spoke. "Perhaps," he said gently, "we should let the parents make this choice, as it has always been meant to be." A few heads nodded, and I felt something shift in the room, a quiet realignment of sympathy that hadn't been there minutes earlier. Sensing the tide turning against her, my mother tried once more. "I just wanted him to have a strong name," she said, quieter now, almost pleading, "a name that means something." "Theodore means gift of God," I answered. "I don't need you to tell me what a strong name sounds like. I chose his name the same way I chose to become his mother, with everything I have." The words surprised even me as they left my mouth, but I meant every one. I wasn't only defending a name anymore. I was defending my right to raise my own child without my mother rewriting the story before it had even begun. My mother stood there a long moment, the microphone still loose in her hand, then set it down on the small table beside the podium. She didn't apologize, not fully, not in the way I might once have hoped, but she stepped back from the front of the church and returned to her pew without another word, her earlier confidence visibly gone. My aunt quietly gathered the monogrammed gifts back into the basket and tucked it beneath the pew, out of sight, as if the whole moment could be folded away and forgotten. Father Dominic looked to Weston and me, waiting for our signal, and I nodded. We stepped forward together to the baptismal font, and this time nothing interrupted us. He poured the water gently over Theodore's small head, and the words rang out clear and unshaken through the church, "Theodore, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." Theodore let out a small cry, more startled than upset, and soft laughter rippled through the crowd, releasing the tension that had gripped the room only minutes before. Afterward, as guests came forward with congratulations, several quietly apologized for going along with my mother's announcement, admitting they hadn't known what else to do in the moment. I told them there was nothing to apologize for. The only person who owed an explanation was the one who had tried to make a decision that was never hers to make. My mother left shortly after the ceremony, without staying for pictures or the small reception that followed. Part of me ached at the distance now between us, but a larger part felt something close to peace. I had protected my son's name, but more than that, I had protected a simple truth: some choices belong only to the people making them. Weston squeezed my hand as we walked out of the church into the afternoon light, Theodore calm and drowsy against my chest. Whatever came next with my mother, whatever conversations still lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: I would not let anyone else write the story of my family for me. Not that day, and not ever again.